So the GOP is trying to ban corn. Now, on its head, this sounds like something that conservatives, and that also includes conservative Christians, would cheer, would rally behind, be like, oh my gosh, yes, finally, purity. I'm going to explain why this hurts everybody. Oh my gosh, but Shayna, I never, as for me and my household, we do not participate in corn. I do not care whether you do or don't. Let's talk about why this will still affect you. I will not be reading this entire article, but we are going to highlight some key pieces. So, this is the Interstate Obscenity Definition Act, or IODA, which would redefine what is considered obscene material, because obscene material is not protected by the First Amendment. Now, is anything really protected by the First Amendment anymore? I will leave that up to you to decide, but let's talk about what are some of the amendments that they are making to this word obscene. So, according to the Miller test, which is from Miller versus California from 1973, all three of these parts have to be present for the material to be considered obscene. I will get to that, but first, hi, my name is Shayna. I'm a journalist. I talk a lot about, oh my God, sorry, that's toothpaste. Majestic. Sorry, it is my bedtime. I talk a lot about decentering men and child-free living on here through an intersectional lens. If any of that sounds like a vibe, please like, share, and subscribe for more of this kind of material, and especially more of my travel content, especially if you want to get out of here. Head over to my Patreon, and if you are interested in starting your freelance writing journeys, that way you can write for money and get the free things that you deserve, head over to some of my courses. Links for all of those things will be in the description. And now let us continue on. So part one that must be adhered to, whether the average person applying contemporary community standards would find the work taken as a whole appeals to, basically, if the average person says, that's nasty, yeah, then yes. Okay, moving on. Part two. Whether the work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by the applicable, if it's giving. Sorry, I'm so tired. I maybe should take this a little bit more seriously. And then the final one, whether the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. If this is the case, if all of these three things, look at them. If all of them are present, then technically the work is considered obscene by the law. So now we are moving on to the point where we will start to see how this will affect significantly more people. So these 3 points right here, these 3 points are the changing of the definition of what is obscene. So let's start at the top here. Taken as a whole, like if the material taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest in nudity, schmacks, or excretion. So this word, for those of you who might not know, it just means like particular, like if it's give, oh my God, sorry, my brain. Okay, sorry, my whole brain. If there's a particular interest in anything schmexual. So a particularly schmexual interest in nudity, schmex, or excretion. Moving on. Depicts, describes, or represents an actual or simulated schmexual act or schmexual conduct, actual or simulated normal or perverted schmexual acts or lewd exhibition of schmenitals, and the objective intent to arouse, titillate, or gratify the schmexual desires of a person. Here's where I see the true cracks start to show, and these cracks are all intentional. Let's start at the top of here. Depicts, describes, or represents an actual or simulated schmexual act or schmexual contact. Are we talking about education? Because books can talk about this, like literature, like schmexual education literature can talk about this. Kids talking about consent, learning about consent in school also talks about this. And now that would be up for the chopping block as obscene material if this passes. Lewd exhibition of the schmenitals, according to who, once again? If you are training to become an OBGYN and you have to practice on like those plastic bodies as it comes to like giving birth or learning how to give certain kinds of exams, would that be considered lewd? Oh no, Shayna, that definitely wouldn't be considered lewd. According to who? With the objective intent to arouse, titillate, or gratify the sexual desires of a person. Once again, who is creating the bar for this? Because this on its own right here, as somebody who grew up in the church, if you showed too much angle, that could be seen as your objective was to titillate the sexual desires of a person. Oh, you're showing too much shoulder. How many times have little girls been pulled aside, pulled out of class because, oh, you're showing too much skin. We don't want to arouse the sexual desires of one of the boys in class or one of the teachers in class. Yeah, let's talk about that. And then let's go down here. Taken as a whole, lacks the serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. That means that all romance novels are officially gone. But then if we're talking about artistic, who's to say? One, they're getting rid of all the books. They don't want people reading. They love a dumb person from the United States, illiterate. But then we're talking about art. Who's to say what is and is not art? Once again, who is to say? Because if we're talking about lawmakers, let's just look at their track record. And if we are being so absolutely for real, the bodies of everybody that is not a cisgendered male is heavily politicized and heavily schmexualized in the United States. So technically, as it relates to obscenity and lewdness, all of our bodies, because who is the person that is regulating all of this? They don't look like me, and I'm pretty sure they don't look like you if you're following this page. So our bodies would fall under obscene because of who is regulating, air quotes for those of you might be visually impaired, quote unquote, regulating what is considered obscene and what is not. And later on in this article, it talks about the heavy implications as it relates to a certain project that is 2027 minus 2. I'll just read this bit up here. If you pull back and look at the broad picture of censorship that's going on from any information about trans people to sexual health information, certainly to anything that has adult contact, they are following their promises in Project 2027 minus 2, said Ricky Levy, president and CEO of the Sexual Freedom nonprofit Woodhull Freedom Foundation. And this is just another attempt. So sure, it's a nice idea to think for all of you that are Christian or any other form of conservative, right? If for you to think, oh, okay, like I don't watch or nobody in my family watches, as far as you know, wink, wink. Or like, oh yeah, it's good. Let's get all that off the streets. And you know what? Yeah, we should put more regulations on schmex workers and schmex work in general, all of that. Okay, that's all cute and great, but here's the thing. In a society like the United States, your body that is already schmexualized just by existing in the minds of people that are unwell is already obscene. You existing is obscene to them already. So what affects the most marginalized of us, which yes includes schmex workers, will eventually catch up to the rest of us. And now, here we are. But Shayna, I don't do that. But Shayna, I'm always fully clothed. But Shayna, I don't even show off my wrists. I'm so modest. People have still been graped being fully covered. People have been graped wearing a niqab, which you can barely see somebody's eyes. In the minds of the unwell, your existence is already obscene. Pay attention, stay informed, stay safe out there, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and share this information, please.